So we know that the top, quote unquote, is right. Well, really, it's actually just those two bars right there, right? Right up in there. And interesting how those two bars correspond with that gap level, right? And that's the bottom of that little institutional fingerprint. If we look at the weekly chart, right, sort of think a little higher time frame, that institutional fingerprint, look at the size of it. It's huge. Yeah, it's all the way that the bar that made the high plus the preceding bar. So, maybe we chop our way higher up into here. Very tough for me to come in on the buy side right here. Very tough. But the actual image that I want to show you is not necessarily the silver itself, but you tell me. If we look at this versus the diluted fugazi of this nutso world that we live in, is this silver price actually expensive? And I actually don't think it is. Clearly, you can see if we are worth our weight in a technical worth, then we should have been barking about loading up on these kind of commodities in reload zones. Right down in this area down here, which I think makes sense. That's somewhere down in this area. And oh, what a surprise. Brian's favorite fib. I think you could even call this an Adam and Olga. She's got a bit of a lumpy butt. Or maybe we'll call that Steve, because Steve's got a little bit of a package. Regardless, I think you can see the bottom. And oh yeah, just nice W's there off of reload zones. Like Terry, if you're watching this is exactly what I need you to learn so that you can take your very good fundamental research, which I think is spot on, and now start just being an absolute sharpshooter with your TA prowess. And really all people on this site. This is what I'm really asking of all of you. But what I wanted to do was just show you, I suppose just to finish off this thought, can we get W's on other sides of trend lines? Actually, I don't even really have a W on the other side of the trend line, which makes me believe that I think we have to come back down here and then put in a W and then go. And actually, interestingly enough, if we go back to that gentleman's very, very good video that I showed you, and I would suggest all TRIers to go and watch this video and really maybe even subscribe and bookmark and all that kind of stuff, because these guys put out really good quality material. But you can see there is his trend line breakout. It's interesting on the clothesline. That's trend line would look a little steeper, and I think that's probably your W here. But this R chart that we're looking at right now is just drawing off of this range. And I do like the idea that we pull back here, make some sort of consolidation, even probably kiss this trend line from the other side, and that will give you your sort of next timing signal to actually think about, going and buying physical silver from a timing perspective. And I think that's this image right here. But, if we want to zoom back out and look at that really big picture, and this is what Omar was talking about here, just you tell me, does silver have any room to move up here? Look at that chart. That's insane. That's just crazy. My hunch is that we're probably going to do one of these kind of things where silver just goes into an absolute orgy, and again, up to like 50, 60, 70, $80 an ounce. In fact, actually, you could even make an argument on the adjusted basis. There's some unfinished business up top here, folks. This is all price gaps the whole way. Look at that. You could technically make an argument that that is an unfinished gap that needs filling in way up at the top there. That's back to the highs of like 1980, 81. And interesting enough, that was $50. So there's also a gap here and there's gaps here. You can see this is just Swiss cheese. So whenever the powers that be say, all right, fine, we'll let silver finally get back to sort of normal prices, what it really should be worth, lots of people were talking about the banks manipulating the metals markets and the COMEX exchanges and stuff like that. Frankly speaking, I don't think it has anything to do with the COMEX itself. Interesting, here's a price gap, and you see how they filled it in. As soon as they filled it in, back down we go. Does silver have room to move up here? Absolutely. Tons and tons of room. Is silver technically a buy at these current prices? I think you're a little bit late. And of course, I want you buying W's. I would just simply say, wait for the W wherever it is that comes in on the other side of this trend line. And oh boy, look out. The bull will take off. I don't know whether it's just here just yet. And actually, a really good analogy of this, of course, is we always want to follow things like the gold and silver stock. So XAU, which is technically the gold and silver silver ETF, although I'm not quite sure where they have it nowadays. There we are. Philex Gold and Silver Sector Index. I would have thought they would have had a price chart there. But anyway, this is the gold and silver stocks. And who better to know the price, history, if you will, the direction of the metal price than the companies that are involved in the business themselves. And this is what, keep in mind, I used to be a commodities broker. I used to fucking talk commodities with people day in, day out, every single day of the week, 24/7. All right, when you're calling, you all know the seasonality trade and unleaded and stuff. So, interesting. Like how I drew that trend line off of that price action up just off there, just using market structure. That's the whole logic behind this. And where are we right now on these gold and silver stocks? We are at the trend line, and look how the market just continually gets rejected off of this trend line. And the rule, of course, is can't really consider this a buy until we W out on the other side of this trend line. So I might make the argument business as usual. There's not really a hell of a lot new going on here. And gaps like to be filled in. You can see there's a pretty noticeable gap here that was left open right there. So we might even pop up a little bit higher here, confirm this huge, massive W. And then I would just simply say, if we can do that, and you see, wow, look at this huge bullish market structure. All right, just wait for your W on the other side of the trend line. I don't know where it's going to come in. Like I said, I don't think it's a good idea for any of us to get into the business of predicting what's going to happen in the future. What we do is we just simply follow the chalk marks. And now, if we think about this in very simple terms, I get the feeling that maybe something like that to that, there is your uptrend line. And this, of course, will be confirmed if we trade up through this high, which it looks like we have. So, oh, no, not yet. We haven't really left the range. I mean, yeah, it's been one hell of a seasonal rally here. Don't get me wrong. And all right, I mean, this bottom came in. And really, this is everything we're trying to teach you here from the gold and silver stock. Keep in mind, this is a weekly price chart. Reload zones, all that kind of talk. And, Brian's favorite fib, really interesting turn. I suppose if we look at the daily chart down here, it's probably a nice little structure. I think there was probably a half decent trade here. Yep, there it is. Down, up, down. And then just look how the market just took off here like a rocket. Right off of Brian's favorite fib, all that kind of fun talk. I suppose we could even do things like fog and bombs off of that range. Chaos theory. All right. So 4669, I think, is basically that test of that double bottom level. And we broke out through it, which means, remember we talked on the higher time frame charts there, that weekly chart there is the gap. I wouldn't be surprised if we have some sort of orgy blow off top into here, which confirms this massive W, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a buy, right? You have to wait for the pullback following the event. And I know it might break your guys' heart, but I could very easily see. What do you think the odds are if we say rally up into this huge range up top here? Institutional fingerprint. Actually, here, let's start off the trivia question. Number one, what do you think the odds are that this 877 lines up with a nice reload short zone off of that range? I'd probably say pretty good. So boobity boo and reload zone. Oh, hello. Brian's favorite fib, Mountain Man. What a big, there's a great analogy of Mountain Man stopping the bull. I like the idea that we rally up top here, hit this 877 up into this window. If we can clear through this gap, then look left. This could turn into some sort of huge event. Shooting star kind of idea into that look left kind of event. And we know that the institutional fingerprint looks like there's even a gap up here. Yeah, there is. So we know that the top, quote unquote, is right. Well, really, it's actually just those two bars right there, right? Right up in there. And interesting how those two bars correspond with that gap level, right? So you can see the gaps right there. And that's the bottom of that little institutional fingerprint. If we look at the weekly chart, right? Sort of think a little higher time frame, that institutional fingerprint, look at the size of it. It's huge. It's all the way the bar that made the high plus the preceding bar. So, and this would make sense too, right? Because in essence, I think there's going to be a big fight here at this gap. So, maybe we chop our way higher up into here. And like I said, we've got this big honking monthly double bottom in here. Now, the question I have for you, so I asked, what do you think the odds are that we top out up in this range? I think pretty good. And then conversely, let's even just say, you know what? Let's even be generous. They're going to fill the price gap up top. What do you think the odds are that these gaps and these original bottom is the reload zone going the other direction. So there you go. Look at that. 78.6 is basically right on that gap and right on the last sort of buy signal that we got. And the interesting thing is watch the reload zone. Let's say, okay, we can't get up top there, but let's say maybe we top at that 877. Reload zone didn't change a hell of a lot. It's the same thing. And, maybe we top at the gap. Reload zone doesn't change a hell of a lot. It's still basically against those lows. So if I was a bull and I wanted to be bullish, ironically enough, with regard to this thing, and this actually makes more sense, which of course is going to drive you guys crazy, is, maybe they do break this thing out on a higher time frame. But remember, the next cycle pivot is like over here. And we all know that, 2028, 29, 30, 31, 32 is actually supposed to be some really, really tough economic times. And really, this would be the pivot bottom of the commodity cycle. Could we see that maybe, this particular cycle, we run up here, then we have to come all the way back down and play against this damn trend line. And then we finally get our long-term breakout on this commodity. So, and keep in mind, these are the actual stocks themselves. I enjoy the rally as it is right now. Anything when it comes to commodity investing, I'm a little bit leery about how bullish the public is. Something just doesn't smell right about this. Keep in mind, the public does not do a very good job at timing the market. I mean, you just saw what happened there with Bitcoin and, them chasing that 70,000 and stuff. Hell, I even saw it in the Solana space. I mean, Solana just took almost like a 50% haircut here. 50%. I mean, come on. That's a pretty big move. So, if the public is going absolutely insanely bullish about silver right now, do we want to maybe look at that with a little bit of a jaundiced eye?